All right. On the line, we're joined by Professor Kaba Kamene, also known as Booker T. Coleman. You've seen him in Hidden Colors 1, 2, and 3. You've heard him on the African History Network show. You've heard him here on the Michael Imhotep Show. We used to do the Per Hour Questions and Answers show together for a year. Those shows are archived also. He is in the upcoming documentary Black Friday, which premieres Friday, November 13th in Atlanta, and it's going to go around the country. I'm in that documentary also, so visit thefilmblackfriday.com, thefilmblackfriday.com for more information. We want to welcome to the Michael Imhotep Show, Professor Kaba Kamene. Hotep, brother, how you doing today?
Hotep to you, my brother. Imhotep, I am doing excellent.
All right, good, man. Good to have you back on the show. Good to talk to you. Well, you and I, we talked earlier today, and we were talking about this case here in Spring Valley High School in Columbia, South Carolina, and not just the assault on this African American teenage girl, 16 years old, because she wouldn't give her cell phone to the teacher, but we brought in the dynamic that you're dealing with a white teacher. His name is Robert Long. People should check out the article from heavy.com. It was something like 5 facts about Ben Fields you should know. They broke it down there and showed a picture of him. The African-American male that you see in the video, apparently he is an administrator, but he was not the teacher in the class. So we talked about that dynamic, and also you have a law in South Carolina. We just played the interview that Todd Rutherford, the attorney for the 2 young ladies, he's also in the South Carolina state legislature. He is a Democratic minority leader of the South Carolina House of Representatives. There is a law that was passed in South Carolina that deals with school disturbance, and students can be actually arrested by the school resource officer, who is a officer of the law, by the way, not a security guard, as some people allege. They could be actually arrested for disturbances in class. And this leads to the school-to-prison pipeline that we talked about as well. So give us your take on what took place Monday and what has transpired since then, and then we'll get into the need for taking control of our children's education.
From my perspective, brother, what I saw was the fact that something occurred in the classroom. Having been in the classroom the years that I've been in the classroom, South Central Bronx, 31 years, I know things happen in the classroom. What I have literally watched security forces and the police department literally come into the classroom over my time in education over 31 years, from 1979 to 2009. There's a different world that we're living in right now. The world that I started teaching in did not have cell phones, did not have cameras on cell phones.
Right.
So there were no policemen in the schools. So that when an incident occurred, teacher, the counselor, were the ones that handled these types of situations. But it is by law now. From when I retired, it was law that is why you saw the adults in the room standing back and the officer was in complete control. In fact, it is possible that the security forces can declare what might be called martial law in the classroom. And they can shut down a school by law.
Right.
And the principal has no power. This is how extended this concept has become. As someone who's taught in prisons and someone who is taught in the classroom, I can tell you that the physical makeup, the logistics of a school is no different than a prison. From the metal detectors getting into the school building to going into the classrooms, bars at the windows, bars sometimes even in certain of the classroom doors. that there literally is very little difference. Of course, now children get to go home at 3 o'clock as opposed to being in prison, but basically the structure of schools and the structures of prisons are one and the same thing. So while you're in a school, psychologically, you do have a mental creation of being in a prison, along with the police. Now, they are now extending the concepts where they want teachers to carry guns in school. But what's interesting, my brother, is the fact that to me, what I have observed is that the schools that are the most dangerous are in the more affluent communities where there are literally massacres occurring in those schools. Now, violence of any kind, I don't accept. However, if you have an altercation in a school where two children are going at it with each other, even to the point if it should get so ridiculously out of hand that somebody should get physically assaulted, there is a fundamental reason that made that occurrence happen. If psychologically the society believes that there should be a security officer in that school because of those events, then what do you say when a person walks into a first grade class and massacres the children in that classroom? What do you say when students bring guns into classrooms and shoot the teachers and the classrooms up? When you go into these neighborhoods, they don't have the security that our schools have. Yet their schools are more dangerous than our schools.
Now, why do you say? Oh, go ahead.
Because those are premeditated attacks. Mm-hmm. These individuals have taken innocent people and decided that they're just going to massacre them. Whereas in our schools, when I say our schools, I'm speaking of schools in the African Latino community, where we do have situations where there is street organization. Some people call them gangs. Street organization activities. We do have that. And we do have violence in our schools from time to time. However, psychologically, as unacceptable as that is, as inappropriate as it is not premeditated murder. In other words, when those incidents occur, for the most part, the young people who are involved got involved in that physical violence or whatever it is because of something that happened in that immediate moment, as opposed to someone who premeditates and arms himself to the teeth and goes into a classroom with the express intention of murdering innocent people who have done nothing to them. The point I'm making is by no means making excuse for violence. But what I am saying is that they appear to have security forces amongst us. They don't have security forces amongst their own. And the evidence of it is in that school in Connecticut where they had that entire mass murder. The parents said to those in charge, when they wanted to have security in that school, the parents were up in arms and said, this is not a prison, this is a school. And because of the influence of the community that is fundamentally of European descent, security wasn't there. Not only that, but they razed that building. They tore that building down and rebuilt a new school. Because that terror was so horrific in their minds, they didn't even want their children to go into the same building. So that when we're observing what happened with that young lady, first of all, as a brother, African American, I know, you and I had spoken earlier, that
right
towards the end of my career in education.
Well, say that again, brother. You dropped out for a minute. Brother Kaba.
Towards the end of my career in education, cell phones were being brought to school by children. 2007, 2008, 2009. Cell phones were around at that time. However, in the morning, there was a specific school office aide that would go around that had bags for every class, and those phones would be collected. The phones were put in baggies, of which the children were told to bring in baggies with their name on it. The children would put their phone in the baggie. They then would put it in the envelope. And at the end of the day, the office aide would go around and redistribute the phones to the children. Since then, there have been laws in New York that has said children can bring cell phones into school. Now,
right. Hey, brother, hold that thought right there. We have to take a quick break, okay? Just stand by. We'll pick it up, cell phones in school. Stand by. All right, you listen to the Michael Imhotep Show right here on the Empowerment Radio Network with Now Just Power. Looks like we're having technical difficulty with the stream. So I contacted our engineers. We're going to try to fix that right now. Remember, this show is archived. All these shows are archived. Go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on radio shows at the top of the page. Click on the link for the Michael Imhotep Show for the archive episodes. Okay, and those are the full episodes. All right. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes. Let's bring them back on the line. And remember, this show, this entire show, including the first hour, will be archived. You'll be able to listen to it about 10 minutes after we end the show tonight. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on radio shows at the top of the page and click on the link for the Michael Imhotep Show. All right, let's bring Brother Kaba back on. Okay, Brother Kaba, right before the break, you were talking about cell phones in high schools, and they weren't there when you started teaching. Go ahead and finish your thoughts.
Yes, Brother Imhotep, because now they're allowed to be in schools. And yes. So there has to be some form of regulations as to the proper use of phones you are going to have them. It is very unclear what happened in that classroom. I don't know if we'll ever know the truth. But my bottom line that I am saying is that when you just saw how he conducted himself as a law officer, the concept that I've always looked at as it relates to security, police, their job is to attempt to be able to de-escalate situations and not escalate them.
Correct.
So whatever happened, at the moment that that individual began to videotape that event, it was obvious that the security force was escalating the situation and could have endangered the child that was sitting behind this young lady when he flipped that chair over, not to mention he was out of control of where that chair was going when he flipped it over. That young lady could have broke her neck very easily. She could have snapped her neck.
Right. Right, and she did
the way he flipped that over.
Yeah, she did suffer injuries also. Her attorney, Todd Rutherford, stated that in one of the interviews, stated that her arm is in a cast. She has bruises, and also she has emotional scars as well, probably behind this incident also. Go ahead.
Brother, let's be clear. In my experience in the Board of Education, I have come upon some winning students, and I say that sarcastically. I've come upon students whose life's matter, the way they conduct themselves, has tested every cell in my body as a human being. I know what it is to be with a student who has great challenges and who can test your last nerve. But the one thing that I always attempted to do was to maintain control, even with my own biological children. It is important that the adult maintain his or her sensibilities and not lose it. Because when you lose it, you don't know where things are going to go. And as an adult, you are always going to be responsible for the end result. You cannot blame a child if, in fact, the adult has conducted him or herself to escalate the situation. It's up to the adult to be smart enough. Even if you get to the point where you're beginning or think you're beginning to lose control, you must excuse yourself from the general vicinity so you can cool down. question if you are a police officer or a security officer. You are charged with de-escalating situations. And it was obvious that he was not in control of any part of him just by the way the chair flipped over. He did not know where that chair was going to go. He did not know the psychological trauma he created in that classroom where he conducted himself that way.
Right, exactly. And at the same time, man, I really don't think he cared. This former officer, he's been fired now. He is referred Nia Kinney, who was the 18-year-old African-American girl who was one of the people who recorded it. She was interviewed on MSNBC, All In with Chris Hayes, a couple of nights ago. She was there with her attorney, Ty Rutherford. She stated that this officer has a reputation in the school. He's known as Officer Slam. The report, she said that he allegedly has slammed at least one pregnant girl at the school before, slammed other people. And so he has a reputation. Now you have some other students. He's also the football coach. He is a resource officer, okay, there. So he is also the football coach. So you have some other students saying, hey, this guy, he's a good guy, blah, blah, blah. But there are also allegations of him targeting African-American male students as gang members and targeting them without cause. So I think you're going to the Department of Justice has launched an investigation. The FBI has launched an investigation also. So I think we're going to find out more information about this very soon, and then also Todd Rutherford. So we're going to find out more there.
Brother,
go ahead.
The key is your eyes don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what a great guy he is.
Right.
No matter what anybody may say about him. We all know human nature has it where even the most heinous people are loved by some.
Hey, say that again, brother. You dropped that for a minute. You say even the most what?
Heinous. Some of the worst people in history have been loved by people. Members are people who would kill another person could be loved by some people.
Right.
I don't mean to take it to that extent, but what I'm saying is that when you look at that videotape, no matter how nice he may be to some people, he was absolutely horrific and out of control to that young lady. So, please don't tell me he dates black women. I don't want to hear that. Because half the reason why a lot of us look the way they look is because white men dated black women.
Right.
So I'm not interested. I'm not interested in that. That has nothing to do with what I saw happen on that video, no more than in South Carolina when that man was shot in the back 8 times. You can't bring up the fact that he didn't pay child support and he was running from the policeman. The question becomes, at what point does his running from you cause you to pull out a gun and shoot him in the back? See, what's happening is that the very nature of the challenges that we're facing in our society, that black folk have been telling white folk exist, that white folk have been telling black folk, you got a chip on your shoulder, or you just can't handle it, or you're making a big thing out of nothing. What's happening now is technology is proving what we have been saying all these years.
Right. Hey, brother, hold that thought. We're coming up on commercial break. We're going to finish on the other side. We'll wrap up years and what we've been saying for all these years. And then we're going to get into the topic of the need to take control of the education of African-American children's education. And we're going to clear up these technical difficulties also on the other side of the break. Stand by. All right, you listen to the Michael Imhotep Show right here on the Empowerment Radio Network. Welcome back to the Michael Imhotep Show. Right. Be sure to visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a lot of information there for you. And at the top of the page, click on radio shows. You can listen to the podcast of this show also. All right, let's bring Brother Kaba back on. Okay, Brother Kaba, I think we got all the technical difficulties.
Hotep, brother, man. Glad to be back.
No problem. Everybody listening, we're back on TuneIn.com. You can listen to the show, download the TuneIn radio app to your Android phone, iPhone, BlackBerry tablet. Search for TuneIn.com, and search for Empowerment Radio Network also. All right. Okay, now, Brother Kaba, shifting gears here to dealing with African American education, taking control of African American education. What role does this play in our children out of this public school system? It's not going to happen overnight. And also we're dealing with fighting against the school-to-prison pipeline as well.
We have to begin in the after-school programs, bringing this information, this African-centered curriculum, education. We need to start it in an after-school program, whether it be in church basements, after-school programs, tutorial programs, martial arts programs, every place where we come in contact with our children, homeschoolers. We need to introduce this information because this is not going to change overnight, as you had mentioned. It's not going to change overnight, but we have to start somewhere. What happened to that young lady and what happened in the systems that we have watched over all of these years has come, Carter G. Woodson often said, and I've heard other people say, we are the only people, African American people, are the only people willing to put our children into the hands of those who would wish to oppress them. And
right.
As harsh as it may be, as difficult as it may be, I have to come to the conclusion at this point in history that with everything that people have said to us and done, that if we continue on the road we are, by not coming to the parental meetings, by fathers or males of the children in the system, because when a male is involved in a child's life, school will act very differently towards that child. That's a guarantee. Not that I don't respect the role and the job that our sisters have done, but the system reacts differently to a sister as opposed to a male. And I know this because of the role that I've played in my own children's life, along with how I've watched schools react to when the father comes into the school as opposed to the way in which when the mother comes into the school. So that if we continue to allow this to happen, who can we blame?
Right.
We have to take full responsibility for the education of our children. And if our children are going to remain in the charter schools, in the public schools, then we, when they have a parent meeting, have to come out to the meeting and exert our influence in that school and realize that it is us, the people, that make the school possible because the money flows with the child.
Right.
So we must take this very seriously, and we have to give up a Tuesday or a Wednesday night to go into the school to find out what's happening with the child. It's just like that, Brother Imhotep. At this point, we have to take control. We have to do this.
Exactly. Let me just say this quickly. One of the good things here is in this situation is that it appears that particular school, Spring Valley High School, has a very strong African American parents organization. And I've seen the head of the organization interviewed on News One Now with Roland Martin and on MSNBC also. So that's one good thing. I interviewed State Representative from South Carolina, Cesar McKnight, yesterday, when I guess hosted the Roland Martin radio show. And Cesar talked about that also. So that's one of the good things in this instance. but we need that type of organizing across the country. Go ahead, brother. We have about 4 minutes before the break. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Absolutely. And the work that I am doing, and I will have the distinct pleasure of visiting Detroit next weekend to do some work there,
yes,
is that this curriculum that we're talking about is very real. It exists. It can be done. We can educate our children, and at the same time, they will be able to master the standards that the city and the state and the country require. This can be done, whether it is math or science, language arts, or the social sciences. This can be done, and we need to begin to develop and assist our community in understanding what it is that we're talking about when we talk about a quality education. What is a quality education? And if we are going to deal with standards, whose standards are we talking about?
Exactly. Well, Dr. Carter G. Woodson in The Miseducation of the Negro said that blacks are the only group of people who take their most precious possessions, their children, and ask their oppressors to educate them and to mold and shape their minds. Okay, blacks are the only group of people who take their most precious possessions, their children, and ask their oppressors to educate them and to mold and shape their minds. So this is what the brother was explaining to us back in 1933. Okay, and many of us still don't understand it today. Okay, we have a couple minutes here before the break. So you talked about it. What I want to do is try to give people some action steps to start this transition. Okay, it's not going to happen overnight. I think there are some improvements that need to be made temporarily in the public school system while we, at the same time, we transition as many children as we can out of the public school system. Okay, what are some steps that people can start implementing tonight or tomorrow?
One of the things that can happen as we develop these community groups, one thing is we have to start to form study groups amongst our children, no larger than 5 to a group. We need to start study groups so that with our children that are coming home or in the after-school programs, we need to start to form structured study groups. That's one of the things that I do is I share how to develop study groups. I was part of a staff development program that came out of City College of New York here, where they took groups of teachers and administrators and taught us how to form study groups and how to give the children responsibilities within that group. And one of the things that research has shown is that for the most part, if you bring 5 people together, somebody knows the answer to everything that's going to happen.
Okay.
The same person may not have all the answers, but you may have somebody who can answer the math, somebody who can answer science, somebody who is an artist, somebody who enjoys history, so that in a study group, somebody will have the answer as they're studying their work from the day's assignments that they may have accomplished. We need to form study groups with our children. We need to begin to develop an understanding of how it is that we are going to bring the best out in our children.
Right.
We have to begin to get our parents involved so that they are taking their children through a process. There's a sister. Her name is Carol Taylor. She wrote a book called The Little Black Book. And it has 30 rules that when her son, who is now a grown man, was Carol Taylor.
Okay, The Little Black Book, you said. Okay. Look, brother, we're coming up on a break. We're going to pick this up on the other side of the break because you dropped out for a minute. Okay, we'll pick it up at Carol Taylor, The Little Black Book, okay? And we'll talk about it.
Okay, brother.
All right, stand by. All right, listen to the Michael Imhotep Show right here on the Empowerment Radio Network where knowledge is power. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, Brother Kaba, right before the break, you were talking about Carol Taylor, who wrote a book called Little Black Book, I think it was, and you were talking about her son. Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead and finish it.
When Sister Taylor's son was in middle school, back in the 70s. She was very nervous about what was happening in the street. She got together with Judge Bruce Wright and wrote a book of 30 rules that young African American males and females should be aware of, such as know your blood type. If a policeman hails you, stop. That's not the time to prove your manhood.
What would you say about manhood? What did you say about proving manhood?
That when a policeman stops you,
mm-hmm.
that is not the time that you should decide to prove your manhood.
Right. Yes.
As has been seen over the past year.
Right.
They will shoot you. So these were rules that I used to teach my middle school classes. I taught reading from this book. That's the book we use to learn how to read.
Right.
And so I recommend that every family has a book like this to know how to conduct yourself when you are amongst people who are licensed to do you harm.
Right. Give us the name of that book again, please.
It's called The Little Black Book.
Little Black Book, okay.
And it's not expensive and it's not big. But it's a little pamphlet with 30 rules that you should abide by. Like, all of us should know our blood type. That's one thing right there.
Right.
Each and every one of us, well, when this book was written, it said that you should have a quarter in case you get arrested and you need to make a phone call. But nowadays, you could either have a $5 phone card or even your cell phone. But if your cell phone runs out of, if your battery goes down, you still need to make a call. So if you have a phone card, a $5 phone card, everybody should have a $5 phone card in their pocket.
Right.
Just in case. These are the types of everyday common sense laws that this book talks about. You should know the name of the captain of the police precinct where you live.
Mm-hmm.
You ought to know his name, and you should know the phone number, because you'd be surprised how a policeman would interact with you if you mentioned the fact that you knew the captain of the precinct.
Right.
He would treat you very differently, or she. Because it means that...
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No. It, like what I said was just self-explanatory. It would mean that you had extra information and that you're just not somebody on the street being stopped.
Right. One of the reasons I read an article, and I have so many articles I can't remember which one. It was an article by AtlantaBlackStar.com. They were talking about police misconduct. This was probably late last year, earlier this year. And one of the things they talked about in there is how many of these officers who are involved in police misconduct, police brutality, racial profiling, things like this when it comes to African Americans and Hispanics, but especially African Americans, is because they think they can get away with it because they think that the people who they are targeting lack resources, don't know people, don't have high-powered attorneys, can't afford a decent attorney, don't know judges, don't know police officials, things like this. Okay, if they know that this person knows certain people, most likely they're not going to treat them like that because they realize there can be real repercussions for mistreating this person. Okay, so because they think that this person is weak financially, weak when it comes to connections, knowing the right people, they think they can mistreat them and get away with it. Majority of the time, they think this.
That's absolutely correct, and that's another law, is to seek out a lawyer.
Right.
To seek out a lawyer that you can call if by chance you were to be arrested.
Right.
Know a name and a phone number. Find one. Somehow, some way. So that at least you have an immediate contact to a lawyer if something should happen to you.
Exactly.
Basic understandings, basic rules.
Yes, I agree. Okay. People, if you have a quick question or comment, give us a call, 914-338-1375, 914-338-1375 is the call-in number. Press the number 1 key to put you in queue so it can bring you on the air. You have to press the number 1 key if you have a quick question or comment. Don't everybody call in at the last minute, all right? I'm telling you right now. Now, how can people get your study guide, brother? How can people get in contact with you if they want to bring you in to do a workshop like the one you're going to do here in Detroit next weekend or et cetera? How can people get in contact with you?
Contact me by email. Email is Kamene, Kamene 777 AOL.com. Kamene 777 at AOL.com. There's a study guide I developed, brought my life's work together in outline form to share with our community so that I know I've been asked by a lot of folk in the community, what book can I read or how can I begin studying my history and culture? And I said, just having to name books and having them take out a piece of paper and have to write things out. What I do now is I either give them my card or I give them my email and I say, contact me, email me. I'll send you my study guide. I'm in the process of developing my website that they'll be able to go to. It's not up yet, but right now, you can email me, Kamene, Kamene 777 at AOL.com. The study guide right now is about 70 pages. It's free. It's just something that I offer to our community. Because I think we need to do this right now. Our community needs to understand what it is we're talking about. What should you know, and what are the resources that will assist you getting there? What are the books? How do you develop a framework of understanding your history? I've often said, my brother, as has been said by many people, when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable.
Right.
And as you have brought in that our great scholar, Dr. David Imhotep, with his book, I am teaching a college course right now. It's entitled The Afro-Latino-American Civilization. And I am using his book to begin to explain who the original Americans were. And when the students that I teach see that there is evidence of African people on the American hemisphere 56,000 years ago. Yes. It is just astounding to them. But because Dr. Imhotep has done such incredible research, and he presents evidence that is irrefutable, you can't argue that information. Right. It's just our people. We don't know. They have hidden the truth, but they didn't destroy it. They just hid it, and now we're finding it. Correct. And what's happening now in our educational institutions, this information is coming out, and I'm encouraging our community to take control of your life, take control of your money, keep it in your pocket, things that you need, and spend it with people that look like you. Because all other people do that, and they have no hesitancy. They do it unapologetically and unashamedly. And we need to get that type of strength within us. And if we did that, they would respect us more because they would know we're not to be played with. And I think that this is what we need to start to look at seriously.
Definitely. Well, I talk about what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you have been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So at the foundation of it is African history and culture, which gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. and it influences the paradigm from which you see things, the lens that you see things through. We've been taught to see reality through the eyes of Europeans. So we've been mistakenly taught if something is good for them, then it's automatically good for us, and that's not necessarily the case. Okay, and I want to talk about desegregation for a minute here. When we go back to Brown versus Board of Education, I know you did an extensive presentation on Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, and we talk about the fight for desegregation. And today, we look at what we lost. We lost a lot of African American teachers, administrators, things like this, when the schools were so-called integrated or desegregated. And then today, you have school districts. You hear this in the news and in some news sources. You hear them talking about how schools are more segregated today than ever before, and trying to figure out in African American school districts, predominantly African American school districts, talking about how to desegregate the schools, which to me is ridiculous, because African American students don't necessarily learn better sitting next to a white student, but we need proper resources. Can you talk about what the real fight was for during Brown versus Board of Education?
The situation was then as it is now. The definitions of integration, desegregation, segregation, these terms as it relates to what African folk were seeking is very different from the reality of what they defined it to be. The bottom line was Dr. Martin Luther King, SNCC, and all the other organizations, they wanted the right to be able to do what they wanted to do. They did not want to have to always be relegated to the back of the bus. If they chose to want to go into a restaurant to have a meal, they wanted the right to be able to do that. It wasn't so much to integrate with peoples of European descent, because it's obvious it never couldn't have been what folk were after. The only thing that was integrated was the black community by peoples of European descent who are now educating our children in a most horrific manner. So what we consider to be the civil rights movement, I think that the Montgomery bus boycott was our greatest achievement, but it was also our greatest failure. Because I would have hoped that after 380-something days of not taking their bus, we would have created our own bus company where we never had to go back.
Well, we had a bus company in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the Safe Bus Company. It operated from about 1926 to about 1976, 78, and they had about 500 buses, African American owned and operated, black bus drivers, mechanics, dispatchers. But Dr. Claude Anderson talks about this, and his family, they were part owners in this bus company. And he talks about how when the Montgomery bus boycott happened, that brought about the downfall in their bus line, because they were saying, well, we want to ride on white buses too. And they said, well, we don't have any white buses for you to ride on. And that led to the decline of the Safe Bus Company. That was one of the things that led to the decline of the Safe Bus Company. This is why the foundation really has to be there, the history and culture, because this influences your economic empowerment, your political empowerment, and it's the culture that it's a cohesive bond, and it tells people that the only way that we're going to survive is through self-reliance. All right. So when we look at, and we've had this conversation before, Professor James Smalls talked about this as well, Dr. Claude Anderson, the real fight was for equal access. We were saying that the goal wasn't to bus our children from our schools into hostile white schools where the teachers, for the most part, didn't care about them and didn't want them there. We were saying we want equal funding for our schools in our communities, like they have funding for their schools in their communities. That's what, and we should also have access for. There were some instances where the closest school to you was a white school. There were cases where you have to pass 2 or 3 white schools to go to a black school 4 or 5 miles away or even further. So what we were saying was we should have equal access and equal funding. But the goal was not to to lose half of our teachers and administrators and principals, and to send our children into hostile white territories. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That was the bottom line.
Yes.
Equal access. We wanted, you see, we are under the impression, and they're pushing a concept of there's an achievement gap.
Mm-hmm.
That's not correct. There is not an achievement gap. There's an opportunity gap.
Yes.
And that has to be clearly understood. And when we get to that point where we understand that, then everything else will come into understanding. Until we get to that point, we will always have a challenge understanding what the greatest challenge is. And until we take total control and responsibility for the education of our children, we will remain in the position that we are in right now. The evidence of it is that there are other peoples who are in America today who are of African origin who are doing this.
Right.
You have cultures and nations from Africa and the Caribbean who are in our communities. They are of African descent. But because there is a cohesiveness amongst them, they are getting things done. And whether they are cab drivers or whether they are street merchants or whether some of them are lawyers or doctors or nurses, there's a cohesiveness amongst them that is allowing great things to happen as it relates to the development of their children and their community. And I know it because I see it through the educational system, because I know that when I was moving into the last years of my career, there was a very strong, for the past maybe 15 years of my career in South Central Bronx, there was a very strong movement into South Central Bronx of peoples of Africa, of African descent from the continent, from Ghana and Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, and so Nigeria. And so when they came, they created boards. In fact, it's the African Muslim community that made it possible that the mayor, de Blasio, has now awarded, or I should say given, to the Muslim community of the New York City Board of Education. There are 2 Muslim holidays that are now going to be recognized in New York City. And it was the African Muslim community that made that possible. And they went about it in a very interesting, legal, peaceful, but very strong way. And now there are 2 Muslim holidays that all Muslims and all children will be able to celebrate. And they did it in a very methodical way. So I know that it's possible. But it's just, brother, we got to get this together.
Right.
We have got to get this together.
How did they go about doing that?
Well, they identified lawyers from the different African nations that practice law. Mm-hmm. And they brought together people who sat with other groups that have holidays. They found out how they did it. And they created a manifesto. They created a very logical approach towards why Muslims deserve these 2 particular holidays. I don't quite remember which 2 they are, but they got those 2 days, and they are going to be celebrated this year. Ramadan is respected and is put on calendars that the city controls. And that is not because of what might be called the Arab Muslim. It was because of the African Muslim that is in New York City, who is now living in Harlem and in the Bronx, because that's where Amadou Diallo was, in the Bronx. And being in District 9, I was exposed, and I met many of them who spoke to me about forming parent chapters. And here's another thing. Amongst the African community in the South Bronx where I worked, when we had open school night, the mother and father came, but the mother did not speak. It was the father that spoke to me.
Okay, these were Muslims.
These were Muslims.
Okay.
But I never really asked them. I figured they were by the way in which the mother was dressed. But I never really asked, but I assumed that they were, because many of them are Muslim. Most of them come. There are some Christians, particularly from Ghana. There are some Christians too.
Mm-hmm.
But whether they're Christian or Muslim, they stick together.
Right. Well, they have the culture. They have because of that cultural foundation. Okay.
Yes, and language.
Yes, and language. The cultural foundation and language is part. To me, for my research, language is part of culture. But yeah, they have the cultural foundation.
Absolutely.
They have language, the customs, things like this. And from my understanding, talking to Professor James Small, even if you have a Christian from Ghana, a Muslim from Ghana, whichever high culture they're from, they will usually have African traditions or infused into their religion, into their Christianity, into their Islam, things like this. So that in general, the way they practice Christianity and probably if they go to like an African church here, is probably going to be different than a Black Baptist church or a Black Methodist church. Okay, you know what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And the one thing I recognized about them, Brother Imhotep, is that they know that religion is a learned pattern of behavior, but culture runs through your blood.
Right.
Culture runs through your blood. Religion is a learned pattern of behavior. And when they come here, they put aside any of those differences, and the ties that bind them is their history, their language, their values, interests, and principles. The very three things that Sheikh Anta Diop says is the three things that your oppressor will take from you: your history, your language, your values, interests, and principles. And one of the things that happened when they saw my interest in Africa, when I was able to speak some of the words in Twi or in Yoruba, immediately they took to me. Immediately. There was a connection. Because I connected with them linguistically, I was aware of culture, and they sometimes would bring food. They would bring a dish to me as it relates to the teacher and the respect that they had for teacher, the custom and the habit of respecting the teacher. Many times open school night was late, and they said, "We know that you may not have eaten dinner. We have prepared this for you." And they would prepare a meal for me because of the connection. The same thing with the Haitian community. When I can speak to them in a language that they understand, they will be able to embrace me as a fellow, because what binds us at that point is not that they speak French and I speak English. What binds us is that we both know that we are Africans together. So when I start dropping the books like The Irritated Genie or The Black Jacobins, or if I talk about Boukman or Toussaint to parents who are from Haiti, there is an immediate connection between us. Yes. Not to mention when I speak Voudon. When I start talking about Voudon, that's a whole other story altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So as African people, and the same is with the Spanish-speaking community, the same exact thing. The ties that bind us is African. And if we begin to embrace our brothers and sisters in their language and in their culture, and if we understand, but we must study it to understand it.
Right.
And then they must learn our history, because many of them come here, they don't know our history. They have no idea what we've experienced. All they know is what they have heard about us in Africa before they come here.
Exactly. And a lot of times that's not good. A lot of times it's not good. And,
and most of the time it ain't true.
Right, yeah. A lot of times it's not good. Most of the time it's not true. And one of the things I try to explain to African Americans who have been taught that our brothers and sisters in Africa hate us and don't want us there, things like this, I try to explain to them, well, first of all, you have to understand the same people who lied to us about them lied to them about us. And a lot of that happens through the media, through the movies that are produced, because these movies are exported around the world. They're just not, they are not just shown here in the U.S. These movies are exported around the world through the movies, the TV shows, newspaper articles, media reports. It shapes the way people think, feel, act, and behave towards a targeted group. Okay, and this is what we're dealing with. When you talk about culture and you lay out, you talk about the three things that Dr. Shankat said that your oppressor will take away from you: history, language, and your VIPs, your values, interests, and principles. In a lot of my presentations, when I talk about, I learned about the pyramid principle from Dr. Leonard Jeffries, one of my teachers, and then also later Professor James Small. And they talk about how African history and culture is your foundation, influences your economic empowerment, political empowerment, which are three sides of the pyramid. I explain to people what culture is, because a lot of our people really don't understand what culture is, and I explained it to them that culture includes your traditions, spiritual systems, art, music, dance, folklore, mythology, cosmology, language, educational systems, etc. And culture acts as an immune system, as Dr. Maureen Bahani teaches us. Culture acts as an immune system, which keeps foreign elements from coming in and attacking you. And culture is the glue or cohesiveness that binds the people together and tells them that the only way they will survive is through self-reliance. So, this is one of the reasons why myself and Brother Kaba and other scholars do the work that we do, because history and culture is related, is interrelated. Culture influences the way you think, and history to me is nothing more than historical. It is actions with a timestamp on it. Historical events are actions that people exhibited with a timestamp on it, but they are influenced by a cultural paradigm. So culture influences history, then history in turn influences culture. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that history is 1/5 of the social sciences. When we break down education that we're living in today, there's spiritual science, which we today call communication arts, and that includes the performing arts, the creative arts, and the language arts.
Okay.
There is the physical sciences that include math, science, engineering, and technology. There are the social sciences that is geography, history, politics, economics, and culture. The social sciences discuss the basic social structure of the society itself, upon which, as you speak of, culture and the way in which you develop your rituals, what is important to you, your value systems, your axiologies or your point of references. Geography answers the question where. History answers when. Politics talks about how, in terms of governance. Economics answers the question what. And culture answers the question who. Who in the world, what in the world, how in the world, when in the world, and where in the world. And when you structure yourself grounded in your social sciences, science means scient, means to know. So that when you ground yourself in your social sciences, you then develop the codification of your spirituality. Your spirituality is how you perform, it is how you create, and it is how you communicate. Math, science, technology, and engineering is the codification of your spirituality. It is the word becoming flesh. The social sciences is a discussion of the word that became flesh. That becomes the foundations of an educational system that we as the adults hand down to our children in order for them to sit atop our shoulders and do better than we did. And that is our function. Our society needs to be geared towards understanding its function is to raise the children. In the raising of the children, we are what is raising the children as the adult population. So there is a connection that we have. And the missing link is the fact that we have given our children to someone else to raise, as opposed to us raising our own children. So I am on a crusade to encourage students in high school and college to become teachers. And I've come in contact, my brother Imhotep, in a most happy way with students that I have that are now teachers. I came upon 2 students I had who work with our children who are in our special classes. And while I don't take full credit for shaping their desire to become a teacher, they did tell me I had an impact on their decision. Because
Right.
I'm on a crusade. I'm on a crusade. I'm telling our people, if you want, particularly our brothers, because I know for a fact when I was a kindergarten teacher, I had a powerful impact on the children that I came in contact with. Just my being there as a black man, sitting on the floor and reading them books and talking to them, walking with them to the lunchroom to go to lunch, dismissing them at 2 o'clock. I was their surrogate father, and I acted like their surrogate father. And we have got to do this, man, and we're not doing this, and we're giving it to someone else to do. And at the same time, we're complaining because of what's happening. And I'm saying, look, if you are not in it, why are you complaining when you don't win it?
Right, right. As we wrap up this conversation here, I want to give people also some other resources as well in addition to your study guide. I encourage people to read theblackhomeschoool.com. theblackhomeschoool.com. I know Namalanga, who is the founder of it. I've interviewed her before. I interviewed her recently. I think it was last month. We had her on the Michael Imhotep Show here. That show is archived also. Go back and check that out. We post articles from theblackhomeschoool.com on a daily basis. Actually, the article we're going to talk about once we wrap up this interview later on in the show about a 16-year-old African-American girl who started her first business when she was 6 years old. She's about to open a spa on November 1st of this year with her cousin, and they have all different types of articles dealing with homeschooling, education, different ways to homeschool, how to get started, all different types of things like that. And then also I encourage people to check out LiberatedMindsExpo.com, LiberatedMindsExpo.com. That is the website for the Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo, which takes place every year, the third weekend in July in Atlanta. I've been there the past 3 years. This past July was the 4th annual conference. I was a presenter this year and last year. I was this year and last year. Brother Kaba was a presenter there 2 or 3 years ago. We were there together. So they have people there who are experts in homeschooling African-American children. They have resources, all types of curriculums, board games, everything you can think of. They have those type of resources there and workshops so you can find out more about homeschooling, whether you are a single parent, whether you are a two-parent household, how to do homeschooling co-ops, or even if you just do it on the weekend. Your child goes to a traditional school, but you do some type of homeschooling on the weekend or 2 or 3 nights a week, etc. They have all that type of information there. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that homeschooling just means a parent sitting with a child at home for 8 hours a day schooling them. That's not necessarily homeschooling. There are a number of different ways that can be done. Any insight you want to share into that, Brother Kaba?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's the cornerstone, because I know many of our parents do not like the present charter school or public school system. At the same time, they're overwhelmed thinking that homeschooling means now I've got to teach the children all these subjects. So what I attempt to do is organize communities of homeschoolers so that you might have somebody who is into cooking. They can prepare the meals for the children. You might have someone who was involved in sports. They could become the gym teacher. You might have somebody who is an accountant. They could become the math teacher. You could have somebody who loves to write and likes to read. They could become the language arts teacher. So that one person doesn't have to do everything. But if we organize our families in units, you can begin to develop this homeschooling network. And again, even if you have to send your children to the public school system or the charter school system because you have a job and realistically you cannot homeschool your child, there are still things that you can do on the weekends and after the so-called school day that can bring this information to the children, such as teaching biology, utilizing melanin as the key factor. You can teach cosmology. You can teach the origins of the universe. You can teach any forms of mathematics. You can teach banking to the children.
Hey,
There's so many things that you can do.
You say you could teach cosmology, the origins of the universe, and what else?
That you can teach forms of mathematics. There's banking that you can teach. You know, there are you can use the community. You know, you can bring your child to a business that's in your community, and they can teach the children how they prepare to become business people. There's math involved in this. There's critical thinking involved in this. You know, and so that you can have people help the children. If you have people who are tailors in the community, or if you have plumbers or electricians, you know, any of those individuals, they can be part of your homeschooling network. Not to mention, by law, the school itself is a resource for you. If you homeschool your children, you can use the school's gym.
Mm-hmm.
So that there are laws that help you. And I believe that the blackhomeschool.com that you recommended the community to reach out to will tell you these types of things. There's also a book, Homeschooling for Dummies, that you can buy from the store.
Homeschooling for Dummies also, right.
You know, so this can be done.
Absolutely. Well, it is being done. It is being done. You have homeschool networks across the country. If people visit liberatedmindsexpo.com also, they have resources there that put you in contact with, you know, people like Dr. Samori Kamara, a lot of different people who are experts in the field of homeschooling African-American children especially. Okay, so these networks exist. Some people just don't know that they exist, but just because it's something outside of the circumference of your own awareness does not mean that it doesn't exist, does not mean that it's not true. This means you have to do some more research. Brother Kaba is going to be in Detroit next weekend, November 6th and 7th, Friday, November 6th, Saturday, November 7th, 2015, at the True Oracles of God Ministry. Minister Malik Shabazz is bringing him in. He's going to do, this is not a lecture, he's going to do an educational workshop. There's a promotional commercial for this, so I'm going to play it right now.
Big message.
The Marcus Garvey Movement, Black Panther Nation, presents the return of Dr. Kaba Kamene, formerly known as Booker T. Coleman, for a 2-day seminar educating our community and children for the 21st century. Friday and Saturday, November the 6th and 7th, 2015 at True Oracles of God Ministry. Admission is only $10 for each day. All youth 18 and under get in for free. All educators, teachers, and students are welcome to attend this educational 2-day seminar. Be sure to check out Dr. Kamene in the new documentary film, The Secret to Bald. For more information, call 313-646-3375, 313-718-6008. Celebrating 32 years of community service and 22 years in the ministry of Justice Christ.
All right, so that was right there. That was a clip of Hidden Colors 1, and Brother Kaba was breaking it down, and that was the commercial promoting his upcoming workshop in Detroit, Friday, November 6th, Saturday, November 7th. All right, Brother Kaba, we're going to any comments before we get out of here?
Yes, brother. Well, I'm looking forward to returning to Moortown, and also I'm looking forward to our conversation this coming Monday evening. I believe that we will be talking again in terms of kind of just elaborating on my trip and what it is. And the bottom line is, bring your notebook and your pen. Family, it's time that we start to do this. This is not a lecture. This is going to be an experience. This is a workshop. This is a place where we are going to begin to talk about. And there are some things I have specially planned for you, those of you that come out, because I want to demonstrate to you what I mean by African genius. I want you to see your African genius. And so this is going to be an activity that is going to show you. You will leave this workshop knowing certain things about yourself that you may not have known. I expect people who attend this workshop, when you leave it on Saturday evening, because Saturday is going to be from 2 in the afternoon until 9 at night, we are going to be working very hard to bring out the very genius in each and every participant that comes out. I'm going to prove to you how great you are. I'm going to prove it to you. So come on out, because I'm very serious about this. We don't have time for games anymore. We got to get this for our children and those yet to be born. So come on out, Moortown. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, who should? I know children 18 years old and younger are free, and I talked to Minister Malik Shabazz today, and just so people know, they don't have a daycare service. So when you bring your children need to stay with you. Okay, but we want to expose our children to this information. Okay, but the adults that come, who should come? Are we talking about people who want to homeschool? Are we talking about parents, grandparents? Who should come to this?
The way I'm structuring this, anybody can come, but people who have a very serious interest in educating our children and our community definitely should be there. But the way I'm structuring it, the activities that I have planned is going to bring out of every participant their genius. And so, because we cannot teach what we don't know.
Correct.
And so every adult is a teacher of the community.
Right.
So I say everybody should come, but people who will be teaching children, who will be around children, who will be around people who might be in drug programs. They may be counselors in drug programs. They may be part of an after-school program. They might be part of the educational system. They may be a homeschooler. They might be a parent who is interested in bringing this cultural information to their children and to their children's friends that come to their house. There might be people who just want to find the genius within themselves. Come on out. Because this is not going to be a lecture. This is not going to be a lecture. This is going to be a sit-down working session to bring the best out of us as a people. So bring your notes and bring your pens and your pencils, because we're going to be working. I'm rolling back my sleeves, Moortown. I'm ready. And I'm coming to work.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Well, we'll see you Friday and Saturday, November 6th and 7th at True Oracle of God's Ministry. We'll see you there, and we'll talk to you Monday here on the Michael Imhotep Show. All right, brother, you have a great night, okay? Hotep to the family.
Hotep to you and to yours, brother, and thank you for this opportunity to share the information with the family, brother. You're always on target, brother. Stay strong. Talk to you on Monday.
Okay, Hotep.